Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, playing some World of Warships Legends on the PlayStation 4. Today I want to talk to you about a premium ship. This one is going to be the ORP Orkan, the Tier 6 premium Polish destroyer, or Pan-European destroyer. For this review, I'll start with some history, move into analysis, jump into the stats, and then finish off with some gameplay. For anyone that wants to skip around, there should be some time codes down in the description. The Okręt Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej Orkan, or ORP Orkan, was an M-class destroyer that saw service during World War II in the Polish Navy. ORP in this case meaning Ship of the Polish Republic. Though you might be forgiven for looking at the ship and seeing something that appears to be a Lightning, or Laforet class ship. Indeed, the L-class and M-class destroyers are virtually identical, other than that they were ordered at different times. At least as near to identical as most ships within a unified class would be, with the earlier L-class ordered in 1937, initially receiving names beginning with L, and the later M-class ordered in 1939 receiving names beginning, predictably, with M. Several of these ships would be renamed during the war, which ought to probably be fairly obvious considering the subject of this video. ORP Orkan began its life as HMS Myrmidon. She was laid down in December 1939 and launched in March of 1942. But she was not immediately commissioned into service due to some concerns about her condition and because there were some other world events, namely the invasion of Poland in September of that year, that were going on around the same time. This brought an influx of highly motivated Polish refugees, as well as elements of the Polish Navy, to the United Kingdom. On the 18th of November, 1942, the Myrmidon was transferred to the Polish Navy and commissioned into service as ORP Orkan, and that was on the same day that the Polish-British Naval Agreement was signed. This agreement functionally folded the remaining Polish Navy under the Royal Navy, though it would be allowed to continue to fly the Polish flag, as well as keep its own uniforms and chain of command. About half of the initial crew for the Orkan consist of these newly recruited Polish sailors from among these refugees who had no experience on warships, so it took a bit longer than normal to work up to full operational status. But by January 1943, the first Sea Lord of the Admiralty, the Royal Navy Admiral Albert Alexander, expressed his satisfaction with the ship's performance. Her first service was alongside the Royal Navy, as it escorted convoys to and from Russia. During this time, the crew got their first experience repelling air attacks from the Luftwaffe, and also helped detect some incoming torpedoes, allowing very thankful Royal Navy ships to dodge them as well. As winter turned into spring, the Orkan first saw service in the Bay of Biscay. Much of her time here was spent turning back submarines, trying to sail to the North Atlantic to hunt convoys. By this point, Germany had been using the docks at Saint-Nazaire continuously for submarine operations since September of 1940, and had completed the famous submarine pens located there just under a year later. As spring turned to summer, she made a very unhappy voyage to Gibraltar. Here she would be given the grim honor of conveying the body of General Sikorski, leader of the Polish government in exile, who had died in a plane crash, back to England. After this, she would see a short time in the Bay of Biscay again, and then return to Scapa Flow in August of 1943. Following this, she sailed to Londonderry, probably more commonly known as simply Derry in North Ireland. Here she would be part of a newly formed convoy support group, also known as a hunter-killer group to us Americans. The job of these groups was to help patrol outside of the normal area protected by a convoy's escort group in order to try to run down U-boats further away from the convoy and sink them if at all possible. On October 7th, 1943, the 10th Support Group was assisting Convoy SC-143 when U-boat activity was detected. The U-boats launched several torpedoes, at least one of which exploded fairly close to the Orkan, around 200 meters behind it, and when the U-boat came to the surface to make an attack on the convoy, it was driven away by gunfire from these destroyers. The following day, though, the Orkan would not be quite so lucky. Shortly after 7 a.m., she was struck by a G7 ES acoustic torpedo, specifically designed to home in on the stern of a ship. The torpedo struck the Orkan in the aft fuel tank. The ship was quickly engulfed in flame, leading to several secondary explosions and killing much of the crew, including its captain. Though around 44 men were saved, the loss of the Orkan was the largest loss of life in the Polish Navy during World War II. In total, 178 Polish sailors and 6 British liaison officers died either from the sinking of the ship or from exhaustion and hypothermia while in the water. The Orkan in World of Warships enters as the second or third Polish premium destroyer at Tier 6, depending on how you want to count it. Granted, the differences between the Błyskawica and Błyskawica Black is really a question of whether you like the historical accuracy of the Błyskawica's camo or think yourself more like James Bond or person who shops at Hot Topic. The Orkan is very different though, and it's a destroyer that is certainly not for the faint of heart. Gifted with extraordinary knife-fighting capabilities, the Orkan can almost rival American DDs in a duel. The use of its maneuverability, speed, and very convenient 360 turrets can probably give it an edge that can't simply be measured in a spreadsheet. To aid in this quest, the Orkan has both decent sea detectability, aided right now by what might be described as a lack of choice in the captain that you can use, but who happens to be very nearly ideal for this kind of ship, and the fact that you have an extremely powerful 9-kilometer radar, even if its duration is relatively short. On top of this, the Orkan's guns are very good fire starters, allowing you to also harass battleships with high explosive spam and a very nice fire chance that pretty much any Russian ship would be envious of, if not for its range. The downsides of the ship are, first and foremost, your lack of not only exceptionally useful short-duration smoke with its fast recharge, it's not only that, you don't have any smoke at all, meaning that you're committed. You're really, really committed if you get spotted. Being a large destroyer without an exceptional amount of speed and no get-out-of-jail-free card, you tend to take a lot of damage if you don't control the engagement with wise positioning. And the ship may not be attractive for folks who really want to torpedo lots of things, because you only have one quadruple launcher, with a second set of torpedoes now being the home of this lonely-looking dual-purpose 4-inch gun, which has a level of usefulness that is probably not immediately apparent to the buyer. So, as a result, the Orkan is a ship that I would say will likely appeal mostly to dedicated destroyer players with a high level of skill, and in particular, map awareness. It probably benefits smart division play more than solo play as well, given your lack of smoke and powerful radar. For those of you interested in buying the ship specifically to get Jezewski, the Błyskawica seems like a much safer bet for most players, and still remains the ship I would rather play in most circumstances, even if I think that the Orkan is a fun and challenging ship. As we jump into stats, there's really no good candidate to compare the Orkan to, so most comparisons are going to be to whatever makes sense, or more than likely, whatever the average is as we go through this section. When looking at survivability, the Orkan comes out with 15,700 hit points and unremarkable armor. The hit points on a destroyer, unless it's something really exceptional in the armor slot, is the more important number here. Though you do come in with around 1,000 more hit points than most destroyers, which is not a bad number, it's also important to realize that you'll need to use these HP more than most destroyers due to your lack of smoke consumables. By way of comparison, the Vauclin and the La Terrible have around 2,500 or 3,000 more hit points than you, and those are the other destroyers at this tier that don't have smoke and have a considerable speed advantage over you in addition. Where guns are concerned, the Orkan does pretty well for herself. the 3x2 arrangement of 120mm guns is probably most comparable to the Jervis, with the full benefit of all of her guns rotating 360 degrees. Her gun range is 10.6, which is fairly average, and reload every 5 seconds. This 9-second 180-degree turret rotation is fast for anything that isn't American, and again, aided by having greater flexibility to maneuver since she'll never have to transfer her guns the long way over her deck. Though the HE shell damage is a bit low, your rate of fire and high fire chance here, listed at 9%, mean that you do above average DPM and actually edge out the recently buffed Cossack as the tier 6 DD with the highest fire starting potential over time. If you have a chance to use your AP shells, they also have good DPM, though at 120mm, you need to be pretty close and shooting at very lightly armored broadside targets. You do also come with a secondary gun, which is less effective than the Cossack secondary turret, though it does have a longer range. Though I can't confirm that it will ever hit anything, just the possibility of trying to get a close quarters ribbon is worth a few lulls and will be a thing of legend if anyone ever happens to do it. Coming to torpedoes, the 10,000 foot view is that you're not looking to get into the Orkan because of her torpedo armament. She has a single quadruple launcher with torpedoes that deal 10,700 damage. Though a 70-second reload is reasonably fast, you lose out both to the Kid and the Cossack in terms of torpedo damage per minute. With a range of 9 kilometers, they are reasonably usable and are easy to fire from stealth with a fairly swift 65 knot speed. Their chief advantage here is their ability to fire one tube at a time, just like Royal Navy torpedo launchers. As we come to maneuverability, 35 knots is not fast for a destroyer, and among destroyers you will face, only the Shiratsuyu will be slower in terms of base speed, though there are a couple of other ships that have the same unimpressive speed as you do out of the box. That said, the other numbers here, both your 390 meter turning circle and 3.1 second rudder shift, are both better than average, though they are far from incredible. Most importantly though, they're good enough to make you feel very at home in the sort of short-range destroyer versus destroyer engagements that you're really meant to participate in. And as we come to concealment, the numbers that you see here are pretty much 100 meters better than average in pretty much every category. This isn't enough to grant you an incredible advantage by itself, but it is also a little deceptive because when you're running this boat, your commander, at least right now, is going to force your concealment down further, and I find that I tend to win most spotting contests with anything that isn't an IJN destroyer. Your consumable selection is really what makes the Orkan different, both because of what you don't have and also because of what you do. You lack both of the consumables that normally make the Lightning a really impressive ship, those being long-lasting, short-range sonar and short-duration, short-recharge smoke, which means that you'll have to do a better job anticipating torpedoes, and you'll have no good way to disengage from your enemies. In their place, you get an extremely powerful 9-kilometer radar. Even if its duration is only 15 seconds, this is not something other destroyers are going to want to experience. Given its short duration, this is one reason I can expect the Orkan to be best used in a division, either with a cruiser or possibly another destroyer, since you also have access to twist and track and can better coordinate with your allies to pre-aim to where you think the destroyer is. And the much more mundane consumable that you get is this speed boost, and though it is pretty much your standard speed boost, it does offer you some speed advantage versus the Lightning, which, if it has any weaknesses at all, is the sort of we'll get there when we bloody get there type of speed it has, and also its lack of twist and track, both of which the Orkan can and should get when you build it. And as promised, we come to the gameplay. We're going to be on New Dawn. We're going to spend probably a little bit more time talking about our commander, since we didn't really talk about him during the course of the review. Obviously, since there's only one pan-European or Polish captain at this point, we have Jerzy Swirsky here, and of course, the only real difference to how I run this ship, at least while I was testing it, versus how I would run the Błyskawica, is this 4th slot skill being Cloudy Days. Essentially, this just lowers your recharge time for your engine boost at the expense of a smoke generator that you don't have. The other way to go is to leave it on the smoke generator, which is more useful for Błyskawica, but is really, really pointless for the Orkan since it has obviously no smoke. Other than that, the only things that I would say really stand out here is I would probably go for as much concealment as you possibly can, just to help you out a little bit in hunting down destroyers and engaging them on your terms. So I have Eric Bay here, and to help me stay in those fights just a little bit longer because I don't have an incredible amount of hit points, we have Bill Sims. Other good choices would be Trubetskoy to just reduce the amount of damage that you take. I could also see an argument to take Violette in order to reduce the amount of time that you're spotted after shooting. I think that's actually probably not going to do enough for you because it will probably only shave something like 4 to 6 seconds off at best. But we should start talking about what we're actually doing here. As you can see, we've rolled out to the southern part of this map. We've spent most of our time trying to spot for our team. And essentially, we were following along and pinging the mini-map to let our teammates know that there was a destroyer probably in that particular square. It does take a little bit of experience to kind of isolate what square it's going to be. For anybody who is seeing a destroyer do something like this, they're pretty sure of the direction. Range is kind of the element of experience that comes in here. It's always, I think, technically a guess, but you can get actually pretty good at it. But in any case, as soon as that destroyer popped smoke, I could shoot at him without giving away my position. Of course, he was a little bit concerned about having his position given away since he was kind of way out there in front of everybody. Obviously, once that radar was popped, he started running for it. We were able to follow him around this island with our fast turning and 360 guns. I would definitely suggest using twist and track on this if you're not using twist and track. I mean, it's your choice, and I hate to tell anybody how to play the game. It's just about as close to a you should do this as I will ever possibly come in suggesting a particular skill for a particular boat. Having the ability to both know the direction of the closest ship to you and also to be able to radar destroyers, because that's probably the closest ship that you're really looking for, is just ridiculously powerful and something that we haven't seen so far in Legends. The Orkan does pay a heavy price for that in terms of its being fairly large, fairly easy to shoot, fairly noticeable, and that's why I like to lean into stealth plus a little extra hit points. As you can see, where I'm at right now, having taken a couple of shots, I'm basically where most Orkans start the game, more or less, in terms of health. So you can see I'm doing a little bit of splitting my fire between this California. Obviously, as a pretty decent fire starter, the temptation is always there to try to annoy these battleships as much as possible, and you're a pretty great candidate for doing that. We're both, getting a little bit of damage here and there, but also, more importantly, starting those fires. Against tier 7s, most of your job is just starting fires because you can pretty much only pen the superstructure. And now, the way that I started thinking about the Orkan is something like you switch back and forth between kind of an American destroyer mentality and maybe a Russian destroyer mentality. I think it's probably safer to say you switch back and forth between an American destroyer mentality, hunting people down with twist and track, and then doing some open water harassment like French destroyers are reasonably good at. There you can see I took just a ton of damage from that California. That's just a result of being a pretty easy target to hit, at least as far as destroyers go. So you do need to pay attention to where turrets are faced, because if you're not careful, you can take a lot of damage in a very short period of time. Now that the California has shot, though, I feel okay opening up for at least a few salvos. And I'm actually going to increase my distance from him here in a minute as this island comes between us. And what in the world? Who put this here? I'm not really sure what that was all about, but I'm pretty sure there's never been an island there before. So we're gonna sail around this. Obviously, you can see our base is being capped, which is not great. One of the things that a lot of you are familiar with is playing in a lightning. Lightning does not offer you a great deal of mobility, so in this sort of situation, you would be probably stuck at in the area of 35 to 37 knots at best, and that would be building into speed. Instead, we have not really built into speed, but thanks to the existence of an engine boost, I can increase my speed by a noticeable amount, and that's going to help me get back to the base here pretty quick. The other thing to note here is that while I'm singing the praises of having a speed boost, off to my left you can see we have a hood that is theoretically a battleship, or battle cruiser in reality. But he is very close in terms of overall speed. As long as we straight line it, we will overtake him, but he's kind of cutting off our best path here. Such is life. If you're the smaller ship, usually you just have to deal with this. So we've managed to outrun him just enough to start to work around him. We are, of course, opening up on the other Orkan. That particular destroyer ran into the problem of having probably one or two too many people shooting at him. I was a little bit lucky that I was not the closest or the only ship over here. As you can see, we have an American destroyer friend who didn't make it. So we'll try to benefit from his sacrifice here. Obviously, he has left us a really nice smokescreen. I'm playing the odds that Gneisenau is more than likely going to slow down rather than speed up. And in this case, this is one of those other reasons why, maybe the Orkan plays a little bit better in a division. Because if you're in a division with a ship that has a smoke, you've taken away one of the largest downfalls of this particular ship. Earlier in the game, when we were pinging the map, asking our team to focus a particular place where we expected there to be a destroyer, it's a lot easier to be able to count on at least one person to care about your opinion, and the easiest way for that to happen is not even to have a CC badge, because nobody listens to me anyway, but actually to have somebody in your division who's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll aim my guns there. I like to do damage. So, In this case, we have managed to defend the base successfully. We managed to hit a couple of times with the torpedoes. Torpedo damage is pretty unimpressive, but I mean, nobody likes to get hit by them anyway. And obviously, if you cause flooding, it can be situationally very helpful. If it causes flooding and they put it out, once again, you're an excellent fire starter. We're just minding our own business here a little bit because we want to get behind this island, mostly because there's a real good chance that any Royal Navy battleship is going to be shooting HE. We're not going to take that chance with just 6,000 hit points. It's probably enough from this range to actually take a hit, but why risk it if you don't have to? And it looks like we have a couple other people who can probably see him. We'll just aid in the fire support, and obviously you can see the arcs on the Orkan's guns when firing over range are very conducive to being able to sit behind an island like a cruiser. So another little bit of an advantage, something that the stats don't exactly tell you. And I was expecting that to go just a little bit longer, obviously, by the way that I launched those torpedoes. But the game is over. The victory is ours. And that'll bring me neatly along to my final thoughts on Orkan. I kind of imagine the right person for this ship are the people who watch my videos and aren't all that impressed with the gameplay. And whether they simply think that I'm not good or whether they're aware that I'm not actually trying to show you the best gameplay that I possibly can, I'd stand by that either way, because this is a challenging ship. You need to be an aggressive but also thoughtful destroyer player when using it. You probably won't enjoy this ship if you're buying this expecting this to be anything like the Błyskawica or the Lightning, which actually kind of mean the same thing, just in different languages. If you're good at French destroyers, other than Aigle, then at least many of the strategies that you're going to use on those sorts of ships are going to transfer over to this one. You're just going to be quite a bit slower. And because you lack that speed, you do need to put a little bit more into the decision making, just because if you get into trouble, you're less likely to get out. But if you're looking for a ship with unique capabilities, one with kind of a high risk, high reward sort of game style, then the Orkan may be fun for you. I certainly enjoyed my several games in this ship, and I think the challenge will help me hone my skills just a little as we wonder exactly how close we are to getting a pan-European line. In any case, those are my thoughts on the Orkan. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, but either way, I do hope to see you on the next one.